And here we are. So today, dear friends of the Longebility community, I have the pleasure of having here with us Miranda Sorgente. You might be wondering, who is this lovely lady named Miranda Sorgente? Well, let me introduce her quickly in a more formal way. Then, as we chat, she will introduce herself very well on her own. Anyway, she is a trainer, a coach, and an Italian author. She has been active in the field of personal and spiritual growth since 1994. After graduating in economics, she began her career at the headquarters of Dale Carnegie Training in New York, which is one of the most well-known and skilled training groups in the world. After returning to Italy, she founded the Love Management Method, which integrates managerial training with spiritual practices and personal introspection. I mean, reading her book, I thought she's someone who wants to help others bring out their potential. That's what she does. In her book, so how did I discover Miranda? Well, somewhere in a bookstore, I found this. You see here all my Post-its. I found this beautiful book, and I thought, but for my community of accomplished people, sometimes people who also live alone, because after the age of 60 or 65, all sorts of things can happen, right? Either because the partner leaves, the children move out, who knows, or sometimes by choice, people end up alone. I thought it might be interesting to read, and as I read it, I really got passionate, even a bit in love with this content, and I went looking for this Miranda, and I tracked her down. And here she is. In this book, The Power of Solitude, Miranda explores solitude as a tool for personal growth. Through personal experiences and reflections, the author guides the reader to transform solitude from a source of suffering into an opportunity for inner evolution. So welcome, Miranda, here in the Longebility community. So I created Longebility.
I want to express my sincere gratitude to you for this.
And thank you for the invitation. I created Longebility 4 to 5 years ago, precisely because I became aware of this phenomenon on a global scale, which now mainly affects Europe and industrialized countries, the aging of the population. And I would truly like to personally contribute to the process of making the third and fourth ages. In our modern era, we have even begun to talk about a fourth age, a significant period of potential personal growth, and certainly not one of decline. Everywhere on television, they talk about adult diapers, glasses, hearing aids. It almost seems like that's the prototype of decline, the elderly person. Instead, I would like to make it, also because I myself have entered that age group, I'm 64 years old, I would like to make it a more interesting and more transformative time in our lives. Also because as we step back a bit from the professional world, and especially since our children may be leaving home and so on, there is more time to reconnect with ourselves. And so your book really hit the mark here, because if I understood correctly, there is great power in this process of reconnecting with oneself. Why did you write this book, Miranda? Let's start from here. Come on. Maybe that could be a good starting point.
Yes, thank you, Enzo. Thank you also for the introduction. I wrote this book for the same reason as everything else, like all the other books, all the other journeys, courses, and video courses, for personal experience. And so, I went through some incredibly difficult times. When I separated from my ex-husband, and so everything happened there. A moment of deep self-questioning, also because I was already teaching love management, so I would say to myself, how can the love management lady not be able to make her own intimate relationship work? Then over time, I understood also, because after all, it was, and even now to this day, we are on good terms, even though we don't see each other and we don't have children together. But I accepted the fact that a relationship can end just as it began, and it can change. So there was a very important moment in my life where there were specific moments, especially on weekends, in particular Sundays. It was exactly a moment when I felt all this weight, and I would say, but what changes from yesterday? Today is Sunday. And I felt this because I probably labeled it as family. I was used to it, maybe. Anyway, my ex-husband and I did a lot of things together. We were avid mountaineers, so we shared passions. And so it's like those moments were, and there was a specific moment when I said to myself, now I have to face this. I mean, I had all the tools to get through it, right? But at a certain point, I said, I have to go inside and understand what it is. And so that's when I started to dig deeper, this difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And there's a huge difference.
Yes, basically, even though you had all the tools, because you're a trainer, a coach, you're an expert in these things, you felt empty, meaningless, detached from everything. Does that mean that in some way you are telling yourself the wrong story, right?
Let's say that I've always been very honest, even with myself when it comes to applying the tools. I've never tried to put up a front, maybe because I started so early. And right from the beginning, I wanted to be called Dr. Sorgente. After 6 months of working on myself, I realized that I was just like all those years spent on my degree. So, well, I caught on pretty quickly. I kind of let go of everything that was just a facade, even though, of course, everyone can always go deeper and deeper. Honestly, it was more than just not knowing how to talk about myself. It was really such a deep part of who I am that maybe I didn't even want to admit it to myself back then. That in any case, there was a part of me that felt alone, felt that there wasn't that beauty of sharing. And I, who have personally dedicated a significant amount of my professional effort to both internal and external exploration, the aspect of sharing has always been very important. And so there, in that moment, I wanted to go inside and really feel what was there. And so, like everything, also the other book, Reclaim Your Power. It was born from a moment of personal difficulty, which I took as an opportunity to go within and transform it, as it later became my most important trademark. Inner alchemy, transform within and manifest outside.
So basically, we need to immediately clarify that there is a huge difference between solitude, which can also be, we'll see that now, it's used as a source of power, and instead the feeling of being separated, of being alone, of being isolated, which we all then try to compensate for with television, our phones, Facebook, the fridge, alcohol, cigarettes, anything will do. Even the partner sometimes, even the partner isn't a sharing based on growth, on love, but rather more of a codependency. So in a way, we are almost blessed when we experience a moment of solitude, because we have the chance to free ourselves from that codependency with the outside world and finally encounter something deeper.
Absolutely. You touched on two very important points. The difference between being alone and feeling alone, and dependency, especially in partners. So in the book, I actually talk about these 3 stages. Dependency, so people are often with someone else and very often in romantic relationships because they feel a need. There is a need, and when there is a need, I am using the other person as a crutch, and that's not it. That's not love. And as for the word love, we could do 50 interviews just on that topic. So it's not a healthy relationship, let's put it that way. Being able to move beyond this need to be with someone because someone else is better or smarter than me at doing things anyway. But instead, finding yourself alone is an opportunity to really take flight, to see that we actually have so much potential that we often delegate to others. And then there's the whole aspect, of course, of being with the unknown, because the most beautiful journeys in the end are the ones you take alone, since there's a total openness to the world. And the other thing, just like you said at the beginning, feeling alone, being alone. So it's not so much about who's around me, but rather what am I looking for? So if I don't actively focus on and work on my relationship with myself as my main priority, then I will never truly be able to have healthy relationships with others. I don't remember who said it, but most of the problems in the world stem from a person's inability to sit alone in an empty room. Yes?
I've heard it before. I can't tell you who said it, but yes, it was someone important anyway who said it.
Maybe I even wrote it in the book. Maybe because for me, it's a great truth.
So, dear Miranda, I think we've all gone through this fear of loneliness. Even though I have a certain amount of life experience, every now and then I still go through it, because I think, is there anyone who thinks about me? I'd like it to be like being on Big Brother, where even if I'm alone, there's still someone out there thinking about me, right? Because then I don't feel so useless. And by delving a bit deeper into this topic, inevitably you end up in the realm of who we are a bit, of spirituality, because in most cases we've been taught since we were kids that we are a body and that's what we have to be. Make it look nice, dress it well, and so on. A mind, and the more we study, the smarter we are, the more we argue with others with that attitude, dragging it out, well, then we've filled all the spaces. But we know that this thing sometimes isn't enough. So if we delve deeper, we can come to realize that beyond the physical body and the thinking mind, there must inevitably be an additional essence that exists as well. Something else, a deeper energy that gave rise to everything, which we can call soul, we can call consciousness, we can call monad, I don't know. So what I've understood, and I'd like your thoughts on this, is that the more I'm in the body, the more I try to act cool, go to the beach, pump up my muscles, or have those smart-sounding conversations, the more in some way I also feel alone because I know I'm putting those things out front, but that's not really my essence. It's not who I am. Paradoxically, when I go to the bathroom and look at myself in the mirror, maybe I say to myself, okay, but now, and who are you? So that encounter I've had with myself, sometimes through practices, meditation, or even just a walk alone in the woods, where there are moments when you say, here, this is who I am. So you also enjoy solitude, removing that disturbance around you, the one that distorts you, that makes you think you are just that damn thing, body and that mind, but instead you are something more. And I believe that you, from what I've gathered in your courses, in your writing, when you talk about inner alchemy, maybe that's what you're talking about, exactly about this.
You've opened up an incredibly broad and complex topic right there, which is where we should all be heading, right? Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, one of the great yogis who brought the Eastern culture of yoga to the West, used to say that when you access that pure, deep, divine love, which exists only in your connection with your own, that sacred and divine part of your being, call it God or call it by any name that you might prefer. Well, when you finally manage to tap into and access that deep space, you begin to understand that it is truly that infinite love. And he says that no form of human love could ever possibly, not even come close to matching it. And so these two things are connected to loneliness. When we are constantly searching for something else, even as you were saying, someone dresses up or just wants likes on social media because they're looking for a reward, but it's always at the level of the ego. So I can feel lonely if I don't get likes, if no one notices the way I'm dressed, if no one gives me a compliment, if no one calls me, then I feel alone. I feel like I'm not worth anything. I feel disconnected, but I'm looking in the wrong place, which doesn't mean not enjoying relationships with others. We are social animals. In fact, in the part of the book, we get to interdependence. Honestly, that is not what drives my motivation. I need to have my emotional tank full, which I can only fill with that specific other part of my life. And I find that I feel it best when I am entirely alone.
This really seems like a central point to me, because many people who find themselves at 65, 70, 80 years old, who are there alone, say, I have no one, it's Christmas, maybe I don't even know where to go, and so on. Sometimes I've noticed that there's also a bit of ego in this, right? It's like saying, I'm superior to everyone. No one is good enough for me. I don't like anyone. Because I think this is the crux of it. When you compare yourself to what I know or what I am, I'm fat, I'm thin, I'm smart, I have money, I don't have money. It's clear that I can always feel embarrassed. And so I don't feel like sharing or connecting with others because I'm comparing myself to something that's out there. I really hope that as the years go by, since our bodies inevitably let us down a bit, that something else will emerge more and more. That is, if through this interview we can help people understand that there is something, that seed that can emerge, then sharing becomes possible, maybe even with an animal. It can be done with a tree. You wrote about it, right? Hugging trees. It can also be done with people, but simply for the pleasure of being there, of waking up, of contemplating what exists without just physical and mental competition. So, Miranda, tell me, what can we do to help those who are following us, who are in this situation, to take the first step? That is, where would you start? We can all invite them to attend your seminars. That's certainly an option, but what could we tell them as a starting point?
Well, first of all, I think it's about changing our mindset, because society really pushes us to believe that after a certain age, we're kind of disposable, right? It's becoming more and more like that. First, let's see that the physical age is shifting. Before, when someone turned 60, we would say they were already old. But now at 60, I, for example, living in Tenerife, see these new retirees who are really enjoying themselves. They have their pension sent there and they're having a great time. So first of all, we should think about what holds value as we age. It's always about thinking about what, not so much what I don't have, but what I do have. So as I get older, my wisdom increases, my awareness grows to the extent that I work on it. So if I think about my most important teachers, what they conveyed to me was that they all had, I'm speaking in the past tense because many of them have already left their bodies, you know? I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh, Father Bernardino, whom I talk about, from the great master who wrote 1,000 books, to the parish priest in the outskirts whom I used to get up very early on Sundays to go and listen to. So the wisdom we can develop, the ability to welcome, I mean, a person goes where they feel good. If I have to go to someone because I feel that the other person is begging for my presence because they feel lonely, I feel drained, depleted of my energy, I go where I feel that I have, that I receive. So going to someone who is a bit older, who maybe has some time where I can feel calm, someone who welcomes me with a smile. You see, whenever I travel and I happen to see people just like that, living with that incredible sense of inner serenity, I just love to stop. When we sit down to talk, they share these stories with me because their life experience is just so rich, something that a younger person hasn't had the time to build up yet. So thinking about what I can give rather than what I want, because once you reach a certain age, you can offer this wisdom, this calm, this embrace, this presence.
The awareness of this sort of vibration, let's call it this soul that animates us, in short, that is there. And I also have the impression that the whole issue of endings, of getting sick, of death, can also be, well, in the longevity vision, I wrote about defeating old age precisely as a theme, meaning to always feel adequate, never feeling old and useless one day. Even at 90 years old, you can be adequate. You can be not someone to throw away. Defeating unhappiness, because you know the etymology of the word happy comes from Latin and means fertile. When a person is no longer fertile, no longer wants to tend to the roses, to go for a walk, they are unhappy. And also defeating death. This is tough. For many, It's hard to understand this. But if we are this soul, probably when we get closer to this soul, even while alive, we learn how to die, to leave the body before we actually go. In other words, we learn that experience. And so we no longer have that fear. When it comes, well, we enter into it, just like we enter into solitude. So learning. Now, I don't want to play the teacher here because you are the real teacher, but I believe that having the courage to face, to be alone, maybe in a forest, or to go for a walk, or to do other things, is a bit like dying. There's a moment when you get really scared, maybe you're afraid, but then you discover the light, perhaps. In your courses, I imagine that certain things come out as well, right? Then what are the experiences that people go through?
Absolutely. Here too, you've touched on some very important points. So I'll go back and pick up on something you said at the beginning, which is about not trying to compare ourselves or cling to who we used to be. I'm also approaching 60, and I'm no longer the same as when I was 20 or 30. So what is no longer there that I can let go of and be grateful for, and what remains? What is there now? What is available now to cultivate, to strengthen, and to offer? So not to compare ourselves either with others or with who we used to be. And to see how every time there is something new and different. And the other point, both regarding illness and physical death, I've now accompanied many people, and I am deeply grateful to them, because the first important point, as the Buddhists say, is that we have many bodies. The physical body is just one. Then there is the body. I really like it when people talk about the body of continuation. The body of continuation is what I leave behind as a legacy. My first book is precisely about this. The subtitle is Leave the Mark of Your Passage Through Time. You are offering something profound. The legacy of your continuation is made up of your thoughtful words and your intentional actions, of your thoughts. This is what you are leaving behind and what others and even the field itself take in, and it will be what you are. What I am saying, I am taking from other teachers, things I have received and processed, and then I have added something of my own. And so someone else will take it and carry it forward. So I have to realize that I am not just my physical body. One of the most beautiful metaphors is to think that we are like waves. We are the wave that manifests itself. And then it ends. But I have a wave body, and I am also the body of the ocean. The wave is already also the ocean. So if I manage to see myself as something that goes beyond my physical body, then physical death is just a passage. And it doesn't scare me so much.
If I use this, even my own personal experiences lead me to this profound awareness. And know that when you focus and put absolutely everything on the physical body, on money, on lips, on your butt, on breast, on muscles, it becomes a constant, exhausting struggle that you will almost inevitably lose, because sooner or later, the reality of life and time eventually catches up with you. But when you shift your center of gravity onto this essence instead, and you no longer compare yourself with all that stuff, you compare yourself with something else, vibration to vibration. I mean, I talk to you, I feel this sort of vibration that comes through, that connection. Now, if we were to base it on who studied more or who did more, in the end, we have to surrender to the fact that we are that emptiness, that wave fluctuation. And the sooner we surrender to it, the less we suffer, probably. Of course. Loneliness causes a lot of harm. Feeling alone causes a lot of harm. According to the WHO, the World Health Organization, it's actually a scourge when it comes to diseases. In more developed countries in particular, it's estimated that 30 to 40% of people above a certain age feel lonely. So Is there a need to re-educate ourselves about humanity, about who we are? No, because it's clear that they keep feeding us this idea that you're happy because you have this, you're happy because you have that, ever since we were kids. No. I have a wonderful 27-year-old son. I've tried to show him there's more to life, because telling him you'll be happy with a car, a girlfriend, or money isn't enough. You're setting him up for unhappiness, because if he doesn't achieve those things, then he's in trouble.